I'm Sarah Clarke, 32 years old, sitting by a cascading waterfall in the heart of a Costa Rican rainforest, my phone deliberately powered down. My younger sister, Olivia, had cruelly uninvited me from her extravagant wedding. But instead of drowning in sorrow back home, I chose self-preservation halfway across the world. The irony was a bitter whisper on the tropical breeze. Her perfect day was collapsing into chaos, while I was finally finding a profound peace after years of unspoken family turmoil. Before I tell you how this happened, know this. Choosing yourself over toxic family dynamics isn't selfish. It's an act of courage that can transform everything. Growing up in suburban Seattle, my childhood with Olivia seemed idyllic from the outside. Our father, Arthur, a successful tech executive, and our mother, Eleanor, a former interior designer turned full-time homemaker, provided us with a beautiful lakeside home, summers on the San Juan Islands, and every opportunity two girls could dream of. Olivia is 3 years younger than me, and as children, we were inseparable, despite our vastly different temperaments. I was always the methodical one. My elementary school teachers praised my meticulous organization, while other kids traded Pokémon cards. I was indexing my books and tutoring classmates in algebra. By high school, I was valedictorian, editor of the school paper, and the dependable daughter who always kept her word. I mapped out my future with precision, earning a scholarship to Stanford for software engineering, graduating with honors, and landing a position at a prestigious Seattle tech firm. Olivia was different. Where I was studious and measured, she was a vibrant, magnetic force. She could charm her way out of anything with her dazzling smile and infectious laugh. When she accidentally flooded the kitchen trying to bake a 5-layer cake at 10, she somehow ended up with a trip to the ice cream parlor as consolation for her distress. When she missed curfew in high school, she'd weave elaborate tales of comforting a friend through a crisis, leaving our parents practically thanking her for her boundless compassion. Sarah, you could learn something from your sister about connecting with people, Mom would often say, completely unaware of how those words pierced my young heart. Not everything has to be so serious, darling. The pattern continued through college. While I worked part-time jobs to supplement my scholarship, Olivia changed majors 3 times at the expensive private university our parents fully funded. When she dropped out junior year to find herself, they supported her chic downtown apartment while she pursued various artistic passions that never quite blossomed into careers. My best friend, Chloe, saw it clearly. We met during our first software engineering job and quickly became close. She came from a family with similar dynamics. Your parents have created different sets of rules for you both, she observed one night, as I vented about bailing Olivia out of yet another financial scrape. They expect you to be the responsible one, but they reward her for being dependent. Despite the simmering frustrations, I loved my sister. When her tumultuous relationship with her college boyfriend, Liam, imploded after she discovered his infidelity, I was the one who flew to San Diego to help her move out. When she lost her job at a boutique because she perpetually arrived late, I helped her polish her resume and practiced interview questions with her. When she totaled her vintage convertible and didn't have full coverage, I loaned her money for a new one, money she still hasn't repaid. "You're the best sister ever, Sar," she'd exclaim, using my childhood nickname that only she was allowed to use. I don't know what I'd do without you. And I believed her. I wanted to believe her, because despite everything, those fleeting moments when Olivia showed genuine appreciation made me feel like the loving big sister I always tried to be. But those moments became increasingly rare as we moved further into adulthood. By the time we were both in our 30s, a stark pattern had solidified. Olivia created chaos, the family rallied around her, and I was expected to quietly clean up the mess, receiving little to no recognition for my unwavering stability. "Your sister just feels things more deeply than most people," Dad would explain after particularly dramatic episodes. "She's sensitive, Sarah. You've always been the strong one." Being the strong one meant my own silent struggles were often overlooked. When I navigated a devastating breakup with my boyfriend of 3 years, David, the family's sympathy evaporated in about a week, as attention swiftly returned to Olivia's latest crisis. When I was passed over for a major promotion I had worked toward for years, my deep disappointment was met with distracted nods and quick changes of subject. Chloe watched it all with growing concern. "You deserve better than being the family afterthought, Sarah," she would tell me. "They take advantage of your reliability." I knew she was right, but deeply ingrained family dynamics are agonizingly hard to break. I kept showing up, kept being reliable, kept burying my own feelings to maintain a fragile peace. Until the wedding. The wedding that would shatter everything. Olivia met Julian Thorne at a tech launch gala our parents had virtually dragged her to, hoping to introduce her to the right kind of people after her string of unstable relationships. Julian, 36, was a charismatic tech mogul, CEO of a burgeoning crypto investment firm, and moved in elite Silicon Valley social circles. 8 years Olivia's senior, he carried himself with the effortless authority of someone accustomed to getting his way. "He's absolutely perfect," Olivia gushed during our weekly coffee date, flashing a colossal emerald-cut diamond engagement ring that practically glowed in the cafe. "We're going to have the most amazing life together." The engagement came after only 4 months of dating, which immediately triggered deafening alarm bells for me. It wasn't just the lightning-fast timeline that troubled me. During the few times I'd been around Julian, I noticed how he subtly manipulated and controlled situations. He ordered for Olivia at restaurants without asking her preference. He'd casually check her phone when she received texts. He made small but cutting remarks when she expressed opinions divergent from his own. "Are you sure this isn't moving too fast?" I asked carefully, trying to balance genuine concern with sisterly support. "You haven't known each other very long. When you know, you know," she replied dismissively, her voice laced with an edge. "Not everyone needs 3 years of dating and a pros and cons list like you and David." And look how that turned out. The barb stung, but I swallowed it. This infuriating pattern had played out countless times before. My practical concerns were instantly dismissed as jealousy or overthinking. Our parents were ecstatic about the engagement. Julian represented everything they had hoped Olivia would find: immense financial security, impressive social status, and the promise of a stable future. They immediately began talking about the wedding as if it were a royal affair. "The Thornes are investing in a new venture with the governor's cousin, dear," Mom mentioned repeatedly. "They summer in Barbados with celebrities." Initially, I was included in the wedding planning by default. Olivia asked me to be her maid of honor during a family dinner, making a grand show of the moment with a small velvet box containing a custom bracelet engraved with "Sister," "Friend," "Maid of honor." "No one else could stand beside me on the biggest day of my life," she said, tears glistening in her eyes that seemed, for once, genuinely heartfelt. For a few weeks, things felt like they had when we were children. We spent weekends browsing bridal magazines, creating digital mood boards, and visiting breathtaking venues. It felt like a true reconnection, and I allowed myself to hope that this shared experience might, just might, heal some of the deep fractures in our relationship. Then Julian's mother, Evelyn Thorne, entered the picture. A formidable woman with impeccable social credentials and an iron will, she swiftly seized complete control of the wedding planning. The intimate vineyard ceremony Olivia and I had discussed transformed into a 500-person opulent affair at Seattle's most exclusive waterfront hotel. The simple, elegant dress designs Olivia had initially favored were replaced by a custom designer gown with a price tag that made my eyes water. "Julian's family has a certain standard to maintain," Olivia explained when I expressed surprise at the escalating grandeur. "This isn't just about us, it's about 2 powerful families joining." As the plans spiraled, my role began to shrink. Evelyn hired a top-tier wedding planner who dismissed my suggestions with thin, condescending smiles. Olivia started scheduling dress fittings and cake tastings without informing me until after they'd already happened. When I eagerly offered to plan the bridal shower, I was informed that Evelyn had already arranged for it to be held at her exclusive yacht club, with a guest list I had no input on. Meanwhile, I was noticing more chilling signs in Olivia's relationship. At a family dinner 2 months before the wedding, Julian openly criticized Olivia's choice of appetizer as calorific, saying, "We need to make sure you fit into that dress, darling." Instead of objecting, Olivia merely pushed the plate away with a nervous, almost imperceptible laugh. When she mentioned wanting to invite her former college roommate, Lena, Julian instantly dismissed the idea, stating, "She's not really our kind of people anymore, is she?" Olivia didn't bring up Lena again. After witnessing several such unsettling interactions, I finally worked up the courage to speak with my sister privately. We were having a rare moment alone during a break in wedding errands, sitting in my electric car outside a high-end floral shop. "Olivia, I'm asking this because I love you." I began carefully, my heart pounding. "Are you sure Julian makes you happy? Sometimes the way he speaks to you seems a little—" Her voice immediately took on a defensive edge. "Controlling?" I finished gently, my gaze unwavering. "I just want to make sure you're being treated with respect." Her expression hardened, a mask of cold resentment replacing her usual warmth. "Just because you can't maintain a relationship doesn't mean you should try to sabotage mine. Julian has standards, and he's helping me become a better person. Becoming a better person shouldn't mean someone makes you feel small." I countered, trying desperately to keep my voice level. "I'm worried about you, Liv. You're worried I'm finally going to have the life you always thought you'd have first." She snapped, her voice rising. "The successful husband, the beautiful home, the perfect family. You're supposed to be happy for me, Sarah. That's what sisters do." The conversation ended there, a thick, suffocating silence hanging between us. I drove her back to her apartment without another word about Julian. But something had fundamentally shifted. In trying to protect my sister, I had crossed an invisible line. Looking back, I can see that moment was the beginning of the end of my role in her wedding. The official exclusion came 3 weeks before the wedding date. Olivia had invited me to brunch at an upscale waterfront restaurant, and I arrived, clinging to a fragile hope that we might repair the growing rift between us. Instead, I found her already seated with Bethany, a friend from her brief stint in fashion merchandising. Bethany had always been friendly enough, though we weren't close. I knew something was wrong the moment I sat down. Olivia's smile didn't reach her eyes, and she launched into conversation with a practiced, almost rehearsed, quality. "Sarah, I wanted to talk to you about the wedding," she began after the waiter took our drink orders. "Things have gotten so complicated with the planning and with Julian's family's expectations. I've noticed," I said cautiously. "Is there something I can help with?" "Actually, it's about your role," she continued, stirring her water with a straw rather than meeting my eyes. "I've been thinking that being maid of honor might be too much pressure for you, with your work schedule and everything else you have going on." My stomach dropped like a stone. "I've made time for everything so far. I've rearranged client meetings and worked weekends to be available." "I know, but—" Olivia glanced at Bethany, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Bethany and I have reconnected so much during this process, and she really understands the vision I have for the wedding. So, I've asked her to step in as maid of honor." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You're replacing me as your maid of honor?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It's not replacing," Olivia said quickly, her words a frantic rush. "It's just realigning roles to reduce your stress." "I'm not stressed about being your maid of honor," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, my chest tight. "I'm your sister. I want to stand beside you." "Well," she said, finally meeting my eyes with a hardened expression I barely recognized. "There's something else. Julian thinks, and we both think, that your negativity about our relationship is creating bad energy around the wedding." "My negativity?" I repeated, incredulous, a bitter laugh escaping me. "You've made it clear you don't approve of Julian or how quickly we got engaged. You've questioned my decisions at every turn." Julian says I need to surround myself with supportive people right now, not someone who's secretly hoping we fail. The accusation was so far from the truth that for a moment, I couldn't speak. When I did find my voice, it came out as a raw whisper. I have never, ever wanted anything but happiness for you. Your version of my happiness, she countered, her voice sharp and unforgiving. Not what actually makes me happy. I looked from Olivia to Bethany, who had the grace to look profoundly uncomfortable, and then back to my sister, my vision blurring. So, what are you saying? You don't want me as maid of honor, but I'm still a bridesmaid? Olivia took a deep, shaky breath. I think it would be best if you came as a guest. Just focus on enjoying the day without responsibilities. The reframing was stunning in its audacity. Being removed from the wedding party wasn't for my benefit. It was a demotion, a public statement about my standing with my sister. I somehow made it through the rest of brunch in a fog of searing hurt and disbelief. I don't remember what I ate or what else was said. When I got home, I called our parents, certain they would be as shocked and outraged as I was by Olivia's decision. Sweetheart, we know it's disappointing, Mom said, her voice laced with a strange nervousness when I explained what had happened. But it is her wedding day. Every bride deserves to have exactly what makes her comfortable. Even if what makes her comfortable is humiliating her sister? I asked, the raw pain tearing through my voice. No one is trying to humiliate you. Dad interjected, his tone overly placating. Olivia is under a lot of pressure with the Thorns and all their expectations. Try to see it from her perspective. What about my perspective? Winona, I asked, my voice breaking. Doesn't that matter at all? The deafening silence on the other end of the line was my answer. I spent the next week trying to process the agonizing betrayal. I made attempts to speak with Olivia directly, sending texts and leaving voicemails, pleading if we could talk things through. She responded with brief, dismissive messages, saying she needed space and would reach out when she was ready. That reach out never came. Instead, 2 weeks before the wedding, a text arrived that shattered whatever composure I had left. After talking with Julian and his family, we think it's best if you don't attend the wedding. The tension between us is too much right now, and we need this day to be perfect. I hope you understand. Love you. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Not only demoted from maid of honor, but now uninvited completely. And delivered by text message. My heart felt like it had been ripped from my chest. I called my parents immediately, sobbing hysterically as I read them the message. There must be some misunderstanding, Mom said, though her voice lacked conviction. Let me talk to her. Dad got on the line too. This isn't right, Sarah. We'll speak with her together. But their intervention, if it happened at all, changed nothing. The next day, Mom called me back with a carefully measured, almost robotic, tone. Sarah, we've spoken with Olivia. She feels very strongly about this decision. She says things between you two have been difficult for some time, and she doesn't want any tension on her wedding day. And you're okay with this? I asked, my voice hollow. With her excluding your other daughter from her own wedding? Of course, we're not okay with it, Dad said, having apparently picked up another extension, his voice strained. But we're in an impossible position. If we push too hard, she might. Well, she suggested she might elope if things get too complicated. The Thorns have invested so much in this event. The subtext was crystal clear. The immense social and financial implications of a cancelled wedding outweighed the profound injustice of my exclusion. Once again, keeping the fragile peace with Olivia took priority over everything else. That evening, my friends Chloe and Maya came over with wine and takeout. After I told them what had happened, they found me surrounded by damp tissues, my eyes swollen from endless crying. This is beyond unacceptable, Chloe said fiercely, pouring large glasses of red wine for each of us. Your sister has reached a new level of self-absorption, and your parents are enabling it. Maya added, a family therapist who often provided astute insight into my family dynamics. They're terrified of Olivia's reactions, so they accommodate her unreasonable demands rather than setting healthy boundaries. I just don't understand how it came to this, I whispered, picking at the pad that they'd brought. I've always been there for her. Always. Which is why she thinks she can treat you this way. Maya explained gently. You've consistently shown her that you'll accept whatever scraps of affection she offers, no matter how she behaves. So, what do I do now? I asked, looking desperately from one kind face to the other. Chloe took a long sip of her wine, then set it down decisively. You show her that you value yourself more than her approval. Don't sit at home crying during her wedding. Do something amazing for yourself instead. That night, after my friends left, I sat on my couch, staring at my digital calendar. The wedding was scheduled for May 15th, just 12 days away. I had already requested time off work for the wedding and related activities. The thought of sitting in my apartment alone while my family celebrated without me was unbearable, a crushing weight in my chest. I opened my laptop and began searching for last-minute travel deals. If I wasn't welcome at their celebration, I would go somewhere I could focus on healing myself instead of everyone else, for once. By morning, I had booked a 10-day trip to a remote eco-lodge in the Costa Rican rainforest, departing 3 days before the wedding and returning a week after. The tickets cost more than I would normally spend, but I used the money I'd been saving for Olivia's wedding gift. It seemed grimly fitting. When I informed my parents of my plans, their reaction was predictably self-centered. You're leaving the country? Mom asked, sounding genuinely surprised, even slightly aggrieved. But what if Olivia changes her mind? What if she needs you? She's made it very clear she doesn't need or want me there. I replied, my voice steady, though my heart ached. And for once, I'm going to respect her wishes completely and remove myself from the situation. This feels like you're punishing her, Dad said, his brow furrowed. No, I corrected him, my resolve hardening. This is me finally doing what's best for me instead of waiting around for crumbs of inclusion from a sister who has made her feelings crystal clear. As I packed my bags for the trip, I felt a strange, bittersweet mixture of grief and profound liberation. The dysfunctional family dynamics that had defined so much of my life were incredibly painful, but the prospect of stepping away from them, even temporarily, offered a tantalizing glimmer of hope. Maybe distance would provide the perspective I needed to build healthier relationships with my family moving forward. Or maybe it would confirm what I had begun to suspect, that loving them didn't have to mean accepting mistreatment. The moment I stepped off the plane in San Jose, the humid, earthy air of the rainforest enveloped me like a warm embrace. After 20-plus hours of travel, I was utterly exhausted, but fiercely determined to immerse myself fully in this escape. I had chosen a small, secluded eco-lodge nestled deep within the Monteverde cloud forest, wanting true tranquility and natural beauty rather than crowded tourist hubs. The lodge was everything the website had promised. A collection of individual bungalows constructed from sustainably sourced wood, perched among towering trees, hummingbirds flitting between vibrant orchids. My room featured an open-air bathroom where I could shower under the stars, a canopied bed draped with mosquito netting, and a small private balcony overlooking a mist-shrouded ravine, teeming with exotic flora and fauna. On my first morning, I woke to the calls of unfamiliar birds and the distant, rhythmic chirping of countless insects. For several minutes, I lay still, listening to these new, wild sounds, watching sunlight filter through the dense canopy. Then, out of habit, I reached for my phone, only to pause with my hand hovering over it. I had given my parents the lodge's contact information in case of a genuine emergency, but I had decided before leaving that I would turn off my phone for the entire duration of my stay. No social media updates about the wedding, no potential messages from family members questioning my decision to leave, no work emails to pull me back into my regular responsibilities. With a decisive motion, I powered down the phone and placed it deep within the room safe. The small action felt monumental, as if I were cutting a cord that had always tethered me to others' expectations. At breakfast in the lodge's open-air restaurant, I sat alone with my strong Costa Rican coffee and a plate of fresh tropical fruit, watching other travelers and trying to imagine their stories. At the table next to mine, two women, about my age, were deep in conversation, occasionally bursting into laughter with that comfortable intimacy of old friends. "First time in Costa Rica?" one of them asked, noticing my quiet observation. "Is it that obvious?" I smiled. "You have that wonderful, wide-eyed look," she said warmly. "I'm Maya, and this is my travel partner in crime, Noah." "Sarah." I introduced myself, and yes, first time. "I sort of booked this trip on impulse." "Those are often the best kind," Noah said, raising her coffee cup in a mock toast. "Spontaneous decisions often lead to the best adventures." We chatted through breakfast, and I found myself accepting their invitation to join them for a day trip to a nearby butterfly garden and canopy tour. Maya was a marine biologist from San Diego, and Noah taught high school history in Boston. They had been friends since college and made a point of traveling together once a year. "We made a pact after graduation," Maya explained as our driver navigated the winding mountain roads. "No matter what happens in our lives, we prioritize this time together." As we explored the vibrant butterfly garden and soared through the cloud forest on ziplines, I found myself sharing more of my story than I had intended. There was something incredibly freeing about confiding in strangers who had no connection to my life back home. "Your sister uninvited you from her own wedding?" Noah asked, visibly shocked, her eyes wide. "That's next-level bridezilla behavior. And your parents just went along with it?" Maya added, her brow furrowed. "They always do," I said, surprised by the curious lack of emotion in my voice as I stated this cold, hard fact. Usually, discussing my family's dynamics left me either in tears or seething with suppressed anger. Today, surrounded by the emerald tranquility of this ancient forest, thousands of miles from home, I felt a curious, almost academic, detachment, as if I were describing characters in a book rather than recounting my own agonizing life. "Well, I think you made the absolute right choice coming here instead," Noah said firmly. "Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is remove yourself from toxic situations." The day with Maya and Noah set the tone for my time in Costa Rica. I began to truly embrace the profound freedom of being utterly alone in a place where no one knew me, where no one had any preconceived expectations of me. I signed up for a sunrise yoga class at the lodge, something I'd always been curious about but had never made time for at home. The instructor, an American expatriate named Kai who had lived in Costa Rica for 20 years, emphasized presence and mindfulness. "Your body is here in this beautiful place," he told the small class as we moved through poses on mats facing the rising sun. "But is your mind here too, or is it still tangled in the problems you came here to escape?" The question hit me with unexpected force, a jolt of painful recognition. My body was indeed in Costa Rica, but my thoughts kept stubbornly returning to Seattle, to the wedding that would take place in 2 days, to the searing hurt and rejection I felt. Each time I caught myself ruminating on these corrosive thoughts, I gently, patiently, brought my attention back to the present moment, to the sensation of my breath, to the early morning light painting the mist-shrouded peaks gold, to the symphony of the jungle coming alive around me. After class, Kai approached me. "First time practicing yoga? Is it that obvious?" I asked, echoing my response to Maya days earlier. "You have good natural awareness," he said, his eyes kind but perceptive. "But I could see you battling with something." Your body would relax into a pose, and then tension would subtly creep back in, especially around your shoulders and jaw. "I'm trying to leave some baggage behind," I admitted, a wry smile touching my lips. "It's harder than I expected. The heaviest baggage we carry is often invisible," he said softly. "If you're interested, I lead a meditation session every evening at sunset. It might help with whatever you're processing." That evening, I joined Kai and a small group of other guests on a wooden platform overlooking the valley. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, he guided us through a meditation focused on forgiveness and release. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning harmful actions, his calm, resonant voice explained. It means freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. When we hold on to anger, the person we hurt most is ourselves. I thought about my burning anger toward Olivia, toward my parents, even toward Julian and his family. The anger felt justified, and a part of me clung to it like a protective shield. But as I sat with my eyes closed, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of frogs, I began to see how incredibly heavy that shield had become. I started keeping a journal during my trip, writing in it each morning on my private balcony. I wrote about childhood memories, about dysfunctional patterns I was finally beginning to recognize in my relationships, about the person I truly wanted to become. Some mornings, the words flowed easily, a cathartic torrent. Other times, I sat staring at the blank page, overwhelmed by emotions I couldn't quite name. On the day of Olivia's wedding, I deliberately planned a full, immersive schedule of activities. I started with yoga, followed by a cooking class where I learned to make traditional Costa Rican dishes like gallo pinto and casados. In the afternoon, I hired a local guide named Mateo to take me to less touristy areas of the cloud forest. Mateo was in his 60s, with a weathered face and a gentle, profound manner. As he drove me through small villages and past coffee plantations, he shared stories about Costa Rican culture and his own family. In our culture, familia is everything, he explained, but not always in the way Westerners think. Here, we believe in strong bonds, but also in spiritual equilibrio, balance. If one person takes too much, the harmony is disturbed. What happens when there's no harmony? I asked, captivated. Then we perform rituals to restore balance, he said simply. Sometimes that means giving more to those who have received less. Sometimes it means setting new boundaries. That evening, I attended Kai's meditation session again. As we focused on letting go, I found myself unexpectedly overcome with emotion. Tears streamed down my face as I released not just the recent, searing hurt of Olivia's wedding exclusion, but years of accumulated pain from always being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one whose feelings always came last. Later, alone in my bungalow, I made a profound decision. My original plan had been to return to Seattle a week after the wedding. Instead, I called the front desk and extended my stay by 3 days. The thought of returning immediately to the inevitable aftermath of the wedding, to potential family drama and intrusive questions, felt utterly overwhelming. I needed more time in this sacred place that was already beginning to heal something long broken inside me. The next morning, I joined Maya and Noah for breakfast again. They were leaving the following day, and we wanted to say proper goodbyes. So, the wedding happened yesterday. Maya asked carefully, her eyes searching mine. How are you feeling? Surprisingly okay. I answered, realizing as I said it that it was truly, profoundly true. I spent the day completely present here, not wondering what was happening back home. That's progress. Noah smiled, her eyes twinkling. Are you still keeping your phone off? Completely off and locked away. I confirmed. I'll turn it back on when I'm ready to face whatever's waiting. Just remember, Maya said, squeezing my hand across the table. Whatever drama is happening there doesn't diminish your worth. The way your family treats you isn't a reflection of who you are. As we hugged goodbye later, I felt immense gratitude for these temporary friends who had shown me more understanding and validation in a few days than my family had in years. Their unwavering affirmation of my feelings and choices strengthened my nascent resolve to maintain the boundaries I was only just beginning to establish. My remaining days in Costa Rica passed in a blend of serene exploration and deep reflection. I visited ancient pre-Columbian sites, hiked to a hidden, roaring waterfall, and spent quiet evenings reading books I had downloaded before turning off my phone. With each passing day, I felt lighter, more centered, more confident in my decision to prioritize my own well-being. On my final evening, I sat with Kai after the meditation session, watching as darkness settled over the valley and tiny lights from distant villages appeared like earthbound stars. "You seem different from when you first arrived," he observed gently. "I feel different," I acknowledged, a peaceful smile on my face. "More peaceful, more certain. The work you've done here doesn't end when you leave," he said, his voice a calm balm. "The challenges will still be waiting, but you'll face them with a new awareness, a new strength." "I'm not looking forward to turning my phone back on," I admitted, a ripple of anxiety passing through me. "I know there will be messages, probably angry ones. Remember that you can respond to others with compassion while still maintaining your boundaries," he advised. "The path of least resistance isn't always the path of growth." As I packed my bags that night, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. A pang of sadness at leaving this beautiful place that had become a sanctuary, a surge of anxiety about what awaited me at home. But underlying all these feelings was a newfound strength and a crystalline clarity. Whatever had happened during the wedding, whatever family drama was about to unfold, I would face it as a different person than the one who had fled Seattle 2 weeks earlier. What I didn't know then was just how dramatically things had fallen apart in my absence, or how desperately my family had been trying to reach me while I was finding profound peace in a distant emerald forest. A very different scene was unfolding back in Seattle. I would learn the harrowing details later, pieced together from multiple frantic perspectives, but the wedding that had been planned with such precision, such staggering expense, was imploding in spectacular fashion. 2 days before the ceremony, Olivia and Julian had a catastrophic argument during the rehearsal dinner. What began as a seemingly innocuous disagreement about seating arrangements escalated quickly when Julian's best man, Connor, made an ill-timed, drunken joke about Julian's close calls with financial ruin before hitting it big in crypto. Olivia, who had been told Julian had amassed his wealth through brilliant, legitimate investments, demanded an immediate explanation. "It's nothing, Liv." Julian insisted loudly, in front of their gathered families. "Connor has an inappropriate sense of humor." But the damage was done. That night, in their lavish hotel suite, Olivia pressed for answers. According to what she later tearfully told our mother, Julian initially dismissed her concerns, then became viciously defensive when she wouldn't let it go. "Why are you so insecure?" he reportedly demanded, his voice dangerously low. "This is exactly why I didn't tell you everything. You overreact to everything." The argument might have blown over if Julian's phone hadn't chimed with a cryptic text message just then. When he lunged desperately to keep Olivia from seeing it, her suspicions flared into blazing certainty. She snatched the phone. The message was from someone named Mr. Sterling, referencing urgent margin calls and the plummeting value of the Obsidian Fund. "Who's Mr. Sterling?" Olivia demanded, her voice trembling. "And what Obsidian Fund?" The truth came tumbling out in ugly, devastating fragments. Julian Thorne had significant, terrifying financial problems he'd meticulously hidden from Olivia. His burgeoning crypto investment firm was a house of cards built on highly leveraged, speculative assets, hemorrhaging clients, and facing multiple lawsuits. The lavish lifestyle he projected, the grand gestures, the colossal wedding. It was increasingly funded by a monstrous web of debt and dubious schemes. Mr. Lifestyle. Sterling was not a lover, as Olivia initially feared, but his most aggressive creditor, who had been helping him conceal the true extent of his troubles, even from Julian's own family. "You lied to me about everything," Olivia screamed, according to her later account to our parents. "Your business, your finances, your past." "I didn't lie," Julian insisted, his face a mask of furious denial. "I just didn't share every single detail, and none of this would be an issue if you weren't so concerned with status and appearances." "Me concerned with appearances?" Olivia shot back, her voice laced with pure venom. "You're the one who insisted on a wedding we apparently can't afford just so you could impress your family and business associates." The argument raged into the early morning hours, their shouts echoing through the luxurious suite. By dawn, Olivia had packed a single bag and fled to our parents' lakeside house, leaving Julian alone in the opulent hotel suite they were supposed to share until the wedding. When news of the fight reached Julian's parents, the Thornes immediately went into damage control mode. Evelyn Thorne, Julian's mother, arrived at our parents' house by mid-morning, insisting on speaking with Olivia alone. What transpired during that conversation only made things astronomically worse. She didn't come to reconcile us. Olivia sobbed to our mother afterward, her face buried in her hands. She came to convince me to go through with the wedding regardless of how I feel or what Julian did. She said, "Every marriage has its challenges, Olivia, and financial matters can be resolved. Think of the scandal." Olivia looked up, her eyes wide with pain. She cares more about avoiding embarrassment than about whether her son lied to me about everything. Our parents, to their credit, supported Olivia's sudden, raw hesitation. Dad, who had initially been so impressed by Julian's apparent success, was particularly outraged by the financial deception. If he'd lie about something so fundamental before the wedding, he reportedly fumed, pacing the living room. What else would he hide afterward? What kind of foundation is that? By that evening, the situation had become even more volatile. Julian arrived at our parents' house, demanding to speak with Olivia. When she refused, barricaded in her old bedroom, he grew belligerent, accusing her of overreacting and ruining everything. He threatened to bill our family for the astronomical wedding costs if she dared create a scandal by canceling. Dad, protective of Olivia despite everything, stepped in. "Julian, you need to leave now." When Julian refused, his face flushed with rage, Dad threatened to call the police, his voice low and dangerous. "No one speaks to my daughter that way in my home." The confrontation ended with Julian storming off, screeching away in his luxury car, but the damage was irrevocably done. Olivia spent the night crying, alternating between righteous rage at Julian's betrayal and gut-wrenching heartbreak over the catastrophic collapse of her dreams. The morning before what should have been her wedding day, Olivia made her agonizing decision. She would not marry Julian Thorne. With shaking hands, she called the wedding planner and asked her to notify the guests that the ceremony was canceled. The planner, who had witnessed countless wedding day dramas, tried to suggest postponement rather than outright cancellation. "Many couples have pre-wedding jitters, dear," she advised gently. "Give yourself time to think." "This isn't jitters," Olivia insisted, her voice hollow. "The wedding is off. Permanently." News spread like wildfire through Seattle's social circles. Guests who had already arrived from out of town were confused, gossiping, and canceling hotel rooms. Social media buzzed with speculation and wild rumors. Julian's mother was reportedly telling anyone who would listen that the wedding was merely postponed due to Olivia's emotional state, implying the fault lay entirely with her, rather than with her son's profound deception. At her parents' house, Olivia remained in her old bedroom, emerging only briefly to pick at the food Mom brought her. The expensive designer wedding dress hung unused in the guest room closet, a painful, mocking reminder of shattered dreams. "I should have listened to Sarah," she repeated like a desperate mantra, her voice choked with tears. "She tried to warn me, and I pushed her away because I didn't want to hear it." "We all got caught up in the excitement," Dad admitted, sitting heavily beside her bed, his face drawn. "The Thorne name, the connections, we should have paid more attention to the red flags." As evening fell on what should have been Olivia's wedding night, our parents sat in their living room, emotionally exhausted and utterly drained from the day's traumatic events. "Do you think Sarah is avoiding our calls deliberately?" Mom wondered aloud, her voice filled with a new, raw guilt. "After how things were left, I wouldn't blame her." "No," Dad said after a moment's deep consideration. "She said she was turning off her phone completely during the trip. It's probably still off. And if the lodge staff haven't given her our messages, she has no way of knowing what's happened. When she does find out," Mom said quietly, tears streaming down her face, "I hope she can forgive us. We should have stood up for her when Olivia uninvited her. We failed her." We've failed both our daughters in different ways. Eleanor, Dad acknowledged, his voice heavy with regret. With Olivia, we never set proper boundaries or expectations. With Sarah, we took her strength and reliability for granted. This heartbreaking recognition, though tragically belated, marked the painful beginning of a profound shift in my parents' understanding of their crucial role in our family's dysfunctional patterns. As they continued their increasingly desperate attempts to reach me in Costa Rica, they also began the difficult process of examining their own actions and choices. Meanwhile, I remained blissfully unaware, enjoying my final days in paradise, sleeping peacefully in my open-air bungalow while my family frantically tried to reach me across the world. On my last morning in Costa Rica, I sat on my private balcony, watching the sunrise paint the cloud forest one final, magnificent time. The past 2 weeks had transformed me in ways I was still only just beginning to discover. I felt centered, calm, and exquisitely clear about the boundaries I needed to establish going forward. The time had come to reconnect with the world I had deliberately left behind. With a deep, fortifying breath, I retrieved my phone from the room's safe and tentatively turned it on. The device vibrated continuously for nearly a minute as notifications flooded in. 17 missed calls from my parents, 23 text messages, voicemails, emails, even notifications from social media accounts. I rarely checked. Something monumental had happened. My first instinct was pure panic. Had someone died? Was there a family emergency I had been utterly unavailable for? I quickly scanned the text messages, and utter confusion replaced my initial fear. Mom. Sarah, please call as soon as you get this. It's urgent. Dad. The wedding's off. Olivia needs you. Call home immediately. Chloe. Holy drama explosion. Call me when you're back online. Your sister's wedding imploded, and everyone's looking for you. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, trying to process this incomprehensible information. The wedding was off? After all the meticulous planning, the astronomical expense, the agonizing family tension, it wasn't happening. And now they needed me? Part of me, a small, vindictive part I wasn't proud of, wanted to ignore the messages. They had excluded me, hurt me, dismissed my concerns. Why should I rush to pick up the pieces now that I had been proven agonizingly, painfully right? But the profound work I had done in Costa Rica helped me instantly recognize this reaction for what it was, a purely defensive response to deep, festering pain. Taking a few centering breaths, I considered my options more thoughtfully. I didn't want to be pulled immediately back into the swirling vortex of family drama before I'd even left the peaceful, healing environment of the eco-lodge. At the same time, I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen the messages now that my phone was on. I decided on a measured, empowered response. I texted my parents. Just turned on my phone and saw your messages. I'm safe and well in Costa Rica. My flight leaves tonight. I'll call when I arrive home tomorrow. Whatever has happened, I'm sure it can wait one more day. Then I silenced my phone again and placed it firmly back in my bag. I had one more precious day in this sanctuary, and I intended to be fully, completely present for it. Later that morning, I ran into Maya by the pool. She and Noah had extended their stay and were, serendipitously, leaving the same day as me. You turned your phone back on, didn't you? She asked, noting my slightly distracted expression. Briefly, I admitted, a wry smile touching my lips. Apparently, my sister's wedding didn't happen, and now everyone's frantically trying to reach me. Ironic, Maya observed. After they uninvited you. Very, I agreed. What are you going to do? I told them I'd call when I get home, I said, my voice resolute. I'm not rushing back into the middle of whatever drama is happening before I'm ready. Good for you, Maya said approvingly. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself too. The long journey home gave me plenty of time to think. What could have possibly happened to derail the wedding at the very last minute? Was it Julian's doing or Olivia's? And why was I suddenly so desperately needed after being explicitly told my presence wasn't wanted? By the time my plane touched down in Seattle, I had decided on my approach. I would listen to what had happened, but I would not, under any circumstances, immediately jump in as the family fixer. Whatever crisis had occurred, I needed to maintain the crucial boundaries I had established for myself in the quiet, emerald heart of Costa Rica. After clearing customs and collecting my luggage, I found a quiet corner of the airport and called my parents. Mom answered on the first ring, her voice raw with relief and anxiety. "Sarah, are you home? We've been so worried." "I just landed," I said, my voice tired but firm. "What happened with the wedding?" The story came tumbling out in a rush, with Dad joining on another extension, filling in the agonizing details. Julian's catastrophic financial deception, the explosive, violent fight, Olivia's agonizing decision to cancel, the brutal social fallout. Throughout the harrowing explanation, they repeatedly emphasized how Olivia had been asking for me, desperately. "She needs you, Sarah," Mom concluded, her voice cracking. "She keeps saying you were right about him all along." "I'm sorry she's hurting," I said carefully, my voice measured. "But I need to go home and rest after traveling for 24 hours. I'll come by tomorrow to see everyone." "But, Sarah," Dad began to protest, a flicker of the old expectation in his voice. "Tomorrow," I repeated firmly, my resolve unwavering. "I need time to process everything you've told me." The old Sarah would have gone straight to my parents' house, despite utter exhaustion. The old Sarah would have put everyone else's needs before her own, unquestioningly. But I wasn't that person anymore. I took a taxi to my apartment, showered, and slept for 12 hours straight. The next morning, I woke feeling refreshed, centered, and utterly ready to face my family with my new boundaries firmly intact. When I arrived at my parents' house, the atmosphere was tense, subdued, and heavy with unspoken grief. Mom hugged me tightly at the door, tears silently streaming down her face, thanking me repeatedly for coming. Dad hovered nearby, looking older and more tired than when I'd left, his shoulders slumped. "Where's Olivia?" I asked, my gaze sweeping the quiet house. "Still in bed," Mom answered, her voice soft with worry. "She's barely left her room since everything happened." "I'll go up and see her," I said, my voice calm. "But first, I need to talk with both of you." We sat in the living room, the same room where countless family discussions, arguments, and quiet understandings had taken place over the years. This time, however, I was fiercely determined that my voice would be truly, unequivocally heard. "Before we focus completely on Olivia," I began, my gaze meeting each of theirs in turn, "I need to address what happened before I left. You both allowed her to exclude me from her wedding without any real consequence. You prioritized her feelings, her social standing, and your own comfort over the profound hurt she caused me. Sarah, we know we handled it badly," Dad said, looking genuinely remorseful, his head bowed slightly. "We should have stood up for you." "Yes, you should have." I agreed, my voice gentle but firm. "And I need you both to understand something clearly. I love you, and I'm here now because I care deeply about this family. But things need to change. I won't be taken for granted anymore. I won't be the reliable one who's expected to endlessly put her own feelings aside whenever Olivia creates a crisis." Mom's eyes filled with fresh tears. "We never meant to make you feel unimportant. Darling, you know that." "I know you didn't mean to," I said more gently, but my resolve did not waver. But intent and impact are different things. The impact was that I felt my worth in this family was less than Olivia's. "That stops now." They both nodded slowly, looking somewhat shell-shocked by my directness. The old Sarah would have softened her stance immediately, would have rushed to reassure them that everything was okay. The new Sarah held firm. "I'm going to go see Olivia now," I said, standing up. "But remember, I'm setting new boundaries. I'll support her as her sister, but I won't fix this for her." I made my way upstairs to Olivia's old bedroom, knocking softly on the door. "Go away, Mom," came the muffled, tear-choked response. I told you, I'm not hungry. It's not Mom, I said, my voice calm and clear. It's Sarah. Silence. Then, a rapid rustle of blankets, a soft thump. The door flew open to reveal Olivia in crumpled pajamas, her face puffy from endless crying, her hair unwashed, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. Without a word, she threw herself into my arms, sobbing against my shoulder, a raw, primal sound of pain and relief. You came? You came. She choked out between sobs, clinging to me. After everything I did, you still came? I guided her back into the room and sat beside her on the edge of the bed, keeping a gentle but firm distance between us. What happened, Olivia? I asked once her sobs had quieted, not accusingly, but genuinely wanting to understand. She told me her version of events, filling in the devastating details our parents hadn't known. How subtly controlling Julian had become in the weeks before the wedding. How his mother had practically usurped every decision, how profoundly isolated she had felt. I never should have let him come between us, she said, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. You were the only one who saw him clearly, and instead of listening, I pushed you away. Why did you do that? I asked, my voice soft, urging her to dig deeper. Olivia looked down at her hands, twisting a tissue into knots. Because deep down, I think I knew you were right. And if I admitted that, I'd have to face that I was making a terrible mistake. It was easier to make you the problem than to admit he was. Her honesty surprised me. The old Olivia would have offered excuses or deflected responsibility with practiced ease. I'm so sorry, Sarah, she continued, her voice filled with genuine remorse. For uninviting you. For hurting you. For all of it. I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I don't know what else to do. It's a start, I said, taking her hand gently. But you're right, it's not enough by itself. Things need to change between us, Olivia. I love you, and I'll support you through this. But our relationship needs to be more balanced. What do you mean? She asked, her gaze tentative. I mean, I can't always be the one who bends, who forgives without consequences, who puts my feelings aside to manage yours. I explained, my voice steady. That pattern has to stop. She nodded slowly, her eyes still red, but a glimmer of understanding in them. I understand. I've taken you for granted. I've been selfish. And I've enabled it. I acknowledged, taking my own share of responsibility. We've all played our parts in this dynamic, but now we have a chance to create something healthier. We talked for over an hour, more honestly and openly than we had in years. I shared how I had felt constantly overlooked in favor of her more dramatic needs, how her crises had always eclipsed my own quiet struggles. She admitted to resenting my stability and success, even while simultaneously depending on it. We cried together, laughed a little at shared absurd memories, and began the tentative, fragile process of rebuilding our relationship on more equal footing. Later, we went downstairs together. Our parents looked immensely relieved to see Olivia out of her room, but their expressions turned anxious when I announced that I had something to say to the entire family. I've had a lot of time to think about our family dynamics. I began, my voice calm but authoritative. And I've realized that we've all been playing roles that aren't healthy. Mom and Dad, you've enabled Olivia's dependency while taking my independence for granted. Olivia, you've come to expect that your emotions and needs will always take priority. And I've allowed myself to be cast as the reliable one who never needs support. I looked at each of them in turn, holding their gaze. I love you all. But I won't participate in these patterns anymore. If we want to be a healthy family, we all need to change. What are you saying exactly, Sarah? Dad asked, his voice low. I'm saying I'll be here for Olivia during this difficult time, but on my terms. I'll come by regularly, but not at the expense of my own life and needs. I'm saying that from now on, I expect my feelings and boundaries to be respected just as much as everyone else's. The conversation that followed was difficult, uncomfortable, and agonizingly long overdue. There were tears, defensive moments, and painful recognitions that shattered decades of unspoken rules. But for the first time, I felt truly, profoundly heard by my family. And more importantly, I knew that regardless of how they responded, I would maintain my newfound sense of self-worth. As I drove home that evening, I felt both emotionally drained and strangely peaceful. The road ahead with my family wouldn't be easy. Old patterns don't change overnight. But I had taken the crucial first step by standing up for myself and bravely naming the dysfunctional dynamics that had shaped so much of our lives. Whatever happened next, I knew I would face it with the strength and clarity I had discovered in the emerald embrace of the Costa Rican rainforest. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, our family gathered for Thanksgiving dinner at my apartment. It was the first holiday meal I had ever hosted, a deliberate choice to shift family traditions in a new, healthier direction. Looking around my dining table at the faces of my parents, Olivia, and my cherished friends Chloe and Maya, whom I had invited to join us, I could hardly believe how much had changed since that painful spring. The journey hadn't been easy or straightforward. In those first tumultuous weeks after my return from Costa Rica, there had been setbacks and struggles as we all adjusted to our changing family dynamic. Olivia had, predictably, slipped into old patterns of dramatic need. Mom had instinctively rushed to soothe her, and Dad had looked to me to be the practical voice of reason, to offer solutions. Each time it happened, I gently but firmly refused to play my assigned role. "I love you, but I'm not going to fix this," became my quiet, unwavering refrain. The true breakthrough came when Olivia, surprising everyone, suggested we try family therapy. To my astonishment, our parents readily agreed. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a family systems therapist with a no-nonsense approach and piercing insight, helped us identify and address the deeply ingrained patterns that had defined our relationships for decades. Sarah and Olivia. She observed in an early session, "You've been cast as opposing archetypes in this family, the responsible one versus the emotional one, the achiever versus the one who struggles. These aren't who you actually are. They're roles you've been assigned and have accepted." With Dr. Rodriguez's expert guidance, we began the slow, arduous work of disentangling ourselves from these limiting identities. For Olivia, this meant bravely taking responsibility for her choices and developing genuine independence from our parents' emotional and financial support. "I've been hiding from adulthood," she admitted during one particularly powerful session, her voice raw with newfound insight. "It was easier to be the family drama queen than to face my own deep insecurities about measuring up to Sarah's success." For our parents, the process involved a painful, yet ultimately liberating, recognition of how their different treatment of us had unwittingly created and reinforced unhealthy dynamics. We expected perfection from Sarah because she seemed capable of it. Mom acknowledged, tears in her eyes, and we expected little from Olivia because she seemed to need our constant protection. We did both of you a profound disservice. My own work in therapy focused on maintaining my hard-won boundaries while still remaining deeply connected to my family. Dr. Rodriguez helped me see that true strength wasn't about taking on everyone else's burdens, but about knowing when to fully engage and when to bravely step back. "Your value isn't measured by how much you can endure or how many problems you can solve for others," she reminded me gently. "It's inherent in who you are, beyond any role you play." Beyond family therapy, Olivia and I began meeting regularly for coffee, rebuilding our relationship as two independent adults, rather than as the roles we had been trapped in for so long. She found a job at a small, ethical fashion brand, moved into her own apartment without financial help from our parents, and started taking evening classes in sustainable design. "I want to build a life I'm proud of," she told me over lattes one Saturday, her eyes shining with genuine purpose. "Not for Mom and Dad, not to compete with you, but for myself." I had continued the self-care practices I began in Costa Rica, maintaining a regular yoga practice and journaling to process my thoughts and feelings. The emotional energy freed up by the boundaries I set with my family was now channeled into deepening existing friendships and exploring new interests. Chloe and Maya remained my strongest, most unwavering supporters, celebrating each small victory as I stood firm in my newfound self-respect. They had truly become extended family, joining us for dinners and holidays, including this Thanksgiving gathering. "Before we eat," Dad said, raising his glass in a toast, his voice thick with emotion, "I want to say something. This past year has been one of the hardest and most important of our family's life. We've faced painful truths about ourselves and our relationships. But sitting here today, I'm profoundly grateful for the difficult journey because it's brought us to a healthier, more honest place than we've ever been." "And Sarah," Mom added, turning to me with tears openly streaming down her face, "thank you for having the courage to call us to account. You deserved better from us, and I'm so incredibly proud of the woman you've become." Olivia reached for my hand under the table and squeezed it gently, a silent gesture of profound connection. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice soft. "To new beginnings," we all echoed, our voices mingling in a harmonious chorus as we enjoyed the delicious meal I had prepared. Conversation flowed naturally, seamlessly shifting between serious topics and light-hearted stories. I felt a sense of deep peace and authentic connection I had never experienced in family gatherings before. The tension that had always hummed beneath the surface was gone, replaced by a new, comforting authenticity. After dinner, while everyone helped clear the table, Olivia pulled me aside, a shy, excited smile playing on her lips. "I've been meaning to tell you," she said quietly. "I met someone. His name is Noah, and he's an environmental studies professor at the university where I'm taking classes." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely happy for her, a warmth spreading through my chest. "Tell me about him." "He's kind," she said simply, her eyes sparkling and patient. "We're taking things very slowly. I'm trying to really know him and let him know me before rushing into anything." "I'd love to meet him when you're ready," I offered. "I'd like that," she smiled. "But I'm not introducing him to Mom and Dad until I'm absolutely sure. I'm trying to make decisions based on what I want, not on what would please them or create drama." Her self-awareness touched me deeply. Of all the profound changes in our family, Olivia's growth was, perhaps, the most moving. Later that evening, after everyone had gone and I was loading the dishwasher, I reflected on the transformative journey that had brought me to this point. The painful, public exclusion from Olivia's wedding had been the unexpected catalyst for profound change, forcing me to finally, decisively prioritize my own well-being. What had felt like the deepest rejection had ultimately led to the most liberating self-discovery. I thought of something Kai, the yoga instructor in Costa Rica, had said: "Sometimes the most painful experiences are actually doorways to our most important growth." The wisdom of those words resonated deeply now. The breakdown of old, harmful patterns, though agonizingly difficult, had created sacred space for something new, something infinitely healthier, to emerge. By choosing myself in that moment of ultimate exclusion, by boarding a plane to an emerald paradise instead of accepting the role of the forgotten sister, I had set in motion a powerful transformation that rippled through my entire family. The lesson wasn't that family doesn't matter, or that we should abandon difficult relationships. Rather, it was that true connection can only exist where there is mutual respect. Love without boundaries isn't really love at all, but a complex, suffocating form of dependency that ultimately harms everyone involved. As I finished cleaning up and settled onto my couch with a warm cup of herbal tea, I felt a profound gratitude for the journey of the past 6 months. The pain had been excruciatingly real, but so was the deep, authentic healing that followed. By standing firm in my worth and courageously refusing to participate in harmful patterns, I had helped create the conditions for genuine, lasting change. Family healing is possible, but it requires immense courage, brutal honesty, and unwavering commitment from everyone involved. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones to create healthier relationships? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that choosing themselves isn't selfish, but sometimes the most loving choice they can make. Thank you for being part of this journey with me, and remember, your worth is inherent, not earned through endless giving.